Welcome to Bariatric Business Accelerator, the podcast created for busy weight loss practitioners and their teams who want to systematize, simplify, and accelerate the growth of their new or existing weight loss practice. I'm your host, Carol Clark, and our topic for today is something that I've been talking about a little bit, specifically with some of the practitioners that I work with. I know I talked about this with a few people in a group out at OMA. It came up. And so it's something I thought might be worthwhile for this podcast and for further just thought and consideration, no matter where you are in your career. But that is exit strategies, some of the most common exit strategies for weight loss practitioners. And so it might be too early in your career. You might be thinking, Carol, I'm not looking at exit strategies, but it's never too early to think about this because we want to make sure that we are planning ahead and that we are ready to act on this or have something in our mind in terms of what we want to do for an exit strategy. And so I have been involved in a number of these with different practitioners and different things in our own practice, and there are 4 considerations I want to make sure everyone's on board with, as you likely know already, since you're all smart individuals, smart practitioners. But the first one is there is going to be a need typically for some sort of evaluation. So you want to make sure that your practice books and all your metrics are very up to date. Keeping an eye on those every single month, because if you're going to get into a scenario where you're selling your practice, you want to make sure that it is profitable. So this is really important from the very beginning, putting good processes in place. The other thing is to have a really great legal and accounting team. This doesn't mean it has to be super expensive, but you've got to have somebody who has your best interest in mind and understands your practice and what your goals are. The other aspect to consider is patient care continuity, so that depending on what scenario of what I'm going to talk about you end up in, your patients are obviously well cared for and no one is left without access to care. And then the fourth one is just to really to look at your team as well. I know sometimes the team can get lost in the shuffle. I am very committed to our team. I know even just recently when we downsized a bit for as a planned downsize, it was one of those things where I wanted to make sure every single team member was taken care of. Fortunately for us, we were able to find something for anyone who wanted full-time, but amazingly, they all stuck with us and are just working less hours. So that's a very big blessing for us here in Virginia and a sign of a really great dedicated team, which I am so grateful for. But anyhow, let's get to some of the exit strategies that people will utilize. The first one is selling to a hospital or to a health system. So this could be a full acquisition of your practice, or it could be an affiliation where they're helping you with aspects, but you still have a great deal of control over your practice. So this can be done in a few different scenarios, but that's one that you see commonly happening. The other one is selling to another physician or group. This might be that you have an independent practice and you have a partner who's a junior partner who's going to buy you out, or you're going to be going into a different group. So you'll end up going that route. For that, like I say, it could be an internal partner or it could be external, an independent physician who you're going to sell to, or a group. Once again, you're going to have to go through all those same steps for the valuation and all of that I just reviewed. The third is a private equity acquisition, which we're seeing far more often today than we used to years and years ago. This is basically private equity firms that are buying out practices, and so they provide for you a lot of management oversight and economies of scale in exchange, and so they manage the practice in exchange for part ownership of your practice. So there's lots of different ways that can be set up again, and I don't pretend to be an expert in exit strategies or mergers or acquisitions. However, I have been involved in quite a few. So anyhow, that is the third way that people are often looking into an exit strategy. The fourth one is merging So it's sort of a consolidation where you're actually merging with another practice, which is a sort of another type of, but you become one practice and you kind of determine what name you're going to have, ownership, all that sort of thing. The other aspect some people do is they just close their practice. They decide that there's not really a scenario that they want to move to, or perhaps they're not in a state from a profitability to be bought out or to be acquired or to have that level of interest. Depending, we just want to do this. If you're closing your practice, there is do it in an orderly fashion, making sure that everyone is taken care of and that you plan ahead. Again, that's really important. I have seen physicians just abruptly close their practice for one reason or another, and it is so disruptive to the patients and to your team and creates a lot of oftentimes hard feelings. And anyhow, it can be a mess. So we want to do that in an orderly fashion if that's the case. The sixth way is transition to employment. So perhaps you're just going to become an employee somewhere else. You're leaving the practice. Perhaps the practice is still going to carry on, but you're just going to go into an employment situation because perhaps you're tired of dealing with the overhead or with all the details that go into maintaining and running a practice, because there is a lot. And the other one is succession planning. Perhaps a physician has a child or a relative who is going to be kind of the successor of the practice and kind of take things over. We do see this obviously in many different ways. I've seen it with lots of dentistry offices, some medical practices, and that sort of thing. So that's another one, another thing that can happen. One other thing I wanted to mention, in conversations that I had with a number of practitioners recently, there are a couple of other things for consideration as you are growing your practice and as you're managing your practice, or you're doing this with your partners or that sort of thing. One is to make sure that your practice, as I mentioned earlier, is in a good position to be sold or depending on what route you want to go. So you want to make sure it's profitable. Some practitioners will open multiple locations, make sure that all of them are profitable, which gives them a better weight in terms of more negotiating power at the end of the day. The other thing that physicians do is they will get involved in real estate. So perhaps where you have your practice is a very great real estate location, a great building, you've done a lot of upgrades. And oftentimes, as we are all managing our practices, we're paying off our mortgage, we're moving, try to pay that as best as we can. And by the time it's time for you to follow any one of those scenarios, you actually have an extra sort of a nest egg because you end up selling that real estate or leasing it over time and having recurring income. So there's so many different ways to approach this, but it was a conversation that I had recently with a number of physicians, and it's something that I've seen plenty over the years, been involved with in different ways. And so I thought it was worthwhile bringing this up. Of course, I am not the expert in this field. However, it's just something I've been involved in, and lots of discussions that are out there as there is real burnout for physicians. And there are lots of different things going on in terms of what physicians are wanting to do. So anyhow, I hope this served you well. I have lots more free resources. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do so. Share it with a colleague. Join my e-newsletter. It has great information every single week coming out to you, easy to digest. You can pick what you want. It's easy to find different articles. Always, it has a high readership. My open rates are great. And so I always have that for you. You can subscribe at my website, weightlosspracticebuilder.com. You'll find the subscribe up there at the top. And if you need anything else, please reach out to me. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day.